Howdy. Wow. Welcome back to my channel. It's me, Cyber Angel, and I am back again with another video. So today I really wanted to... Hello?
Who's your favorite slasher killer?
Hey, that's actually the topic of today's video. Thanks for reminding me. So, I know I said in my last video that I really wanted to do more anime related content, and I still plan on doing that. But since it is October, I decided we'd do something a little bit different. I actually tweeted this at the beginning of the month, and I got a lot of people talking about who their favorite slasher villain was. It was actually really interesting to see so many people having opinions on this topic, and I decided that I really wanted to share my opinion too. So what better way to do it than in a video? Today, I'm going to be ranking these 4 slasher killers and telling you who my favorite is. Now, since this is my video and my channel and my opinion, I am going to be a little bit biased. We're going to be using 3 categories to rank them: design, powers/abilities, and reception. Obviously, I know there are a lot more iconic horror villains that we could be ranking, but to keep this video short, I'm only going to be doing these 4, and if you all like this video, I'll do the others. Alright, let's get into the video.
Yes, Michael Myers, the man, or evil thing, I guess, who started it all for many of us. First appearance in Halloween 1978, a film that is often credited with legitimizing the horror genre and jump-starting the slasher craze that was to come later in the 1980s. Our initial meeting with Michael Myers is in the first Halloween film as a young boy in a clown costume who murders his sister on Halloween night and is then sent to a mental institution. Years later, he escapes and returns to his fictional hometown of Haddonfield, Illinois to wreak havoc and slaughter every sex-crazed teenager he can find. His most sought-after victim being the innocent and responsible babysitter, Laurie Strode, who he's actually still trying to get his hands on to this very day. Well, better luck in 2021, Michael. Now to the categories. Michael Myers, or The Shape, is big, tall, loves sporting mechanic coveralls, and dons an eerie white emotionless mask, probably one of the most iconic masks in horror history to be exact. Originally developed from a cheap 1975 Captain Kirk mask, production designer Tommy Lee Wallace painted it ghostly white, widened the eye holes, and changed the hair from blonde to brown. There were originally 4 masks that the prop department had to choose from: a Don Post Emmett Kelly clown mask, a former President Ronald Reagan mask, a 1975 Spock mask, and of course, our winner. The final mask is great because it's pretty much void of any identity and emotion, making the Shape all the more chilling and cold as he takes out victim after victim. Like the film itself, the Shape's overall look is simple, but it works in his favor. It's a highly realistic costume. Any crazed serial killer can easily steal some coveralls and get their hands on a creepy mask. For that reason, I'm giving him a 9 out of 10 for design, and I'm only taking 1 point away because his mask does look different in every installment and only really looks good in the original and in the 2018 sequel in my opinion. Even in the first Halloween film, Michael Myers is solidified as a paranormal anomaly. He's big, he's strong, and practically indestructible. Dr. Loomis describes him constantly as the personification of pure evil. He's not a human, he's an entity. Something that is further played upon in future installments of the franchise. This man has been thrown off buildings, shot multiple times, set on fire, and blown up with explosives. He's okay though, guys, don't worry. In short, Michael Myers' abilities include superhuman strength, stealth, endurance, and durability of an unknown limit. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and give Michael a 9 out of 10 for this section also, since having a killer that basically can't die despite being killed at least 10 times is pretty much the best ability to have. Although Michael isn't as heavily marketed as some of his contemporaries, he's often credited for revitalizing the horror genre and helping make films like Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th a possibility. If it hadn't been for the wide success of Halloween in 1978 on such a small budget, horror probably wouldn't have seen the boom that it did in the 80s. Today, Michael Myers is still regarded as the OG horror villain by many, and although he doesn't say much, his impact on horror couldn't be louder. Friday the 13th was released in 1980 after the massive success of Halloween and followed the same formula of silent masked killer slaughtering teens who like to sleep around on a specific day, only this time at camp. Over the decade, it grew into one of the longest running horror franchises to ever exist, with a whopping 12 installments as of today. And yep, we're still waiting for the big 13th. As many of you probably know, Jason wasn't even the killer in the original film. It was his mother, Pamela Voorhees, avenging his death after Jason was drowned as a little boy due to the camp counselor's negligence. Little Jason does show up at the end though and attempts to drown Alice. I'm not going to go into his whole timeline because it's honestly too long and actually pretty insane. So just keep in mind, Jason is a big pop culture legend. I'm gonna have to give Jason a 6 out of 10 because it wasn't until Friday the 13th Part 3 where Jason finally dons his now iconic hockey mask that we all know him for, and his look is probably the least consistent with his appearance changing in every single installment of the Friday the 13th franchise. From Child Jason, Scarecrow looking Jason, Zombie Jason, Always Wet Jason, and Space Jason? It's kind of all over the place. The mask itself is the most integral part of his design, and as stated, it didn't show up until Friday the 13th 3D, thanks to a random Detroit Red Wings hockey mask being provided to Steve Miner to wear during a lighting check. They loved the look of the mask on camera and decided to incorporate it into Jason's final look for the film. The original mask was too small, so they ended up modeling a larger version for Miner to wear, and art director Terry Ballard placed new red triangles on the mask to give it some edge. The rest is history. In my opinion, the fact that he didn't get his signature hockey mask until way later makes it feel like his design wasn't very well thought out. But he's still pretty cool looking, and we really can't ever look at hockey masks the same way ever again. Well, what Jason doesn't have in design, he definitely makes up for it in ability. I'm giving Jason a 9 out of 10 for this section because he's pretty much on the same level as Michael Myers, if not stronger with each installment, as he goes from normal, deformed serial killer to super zombie spaceman. He's big, he's insanely strong, seemingly invincible, and we're pretty sure he can teleport. Honestly, after getting struck by lightning, I'm surprised he can't shoot laser beams out of his eyes or something. I don't even want to get into everything that Uber Jason can do. Let's just say you're probably not going to survive this one. Although it's undeniable that Jason Voorhees is a favorite amongst horror fans, I think it is important to note that the Friday the 13th films have some of the worst critical reception of any other franchise on this list. However, the franchise is usually great at the box office, and the last 2 films released have been the highest earning, therefore solidifying the notion that people still love Jason and they want to see a lot more from him. He's a pop culture icon and often regarded as one of the most influential horror villains. Child murderer, comedian, Jason Voorhees' rival, and star of the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Released in 1984, Nightmare on Elm Street follows the slasher tropes set in place by its predecessors. If you're a bad kid, you die. Only if you take a nap though. Freddy's backstory is that he was actually the gruesome child serial killer known as the Springwood Slasher. After being released by the authorities on a technicality, the parents of the children that he killed ended up trapping him in the boiler room of the power plant he worked at and successfully burned him alive, giving him his now iconic scars. Freddy then becomes a dream demon that can enter his victims' dreams and kill them in the dream world, and if you die there, you die in real life. He gets his revenge by slaughtering the kids of Elm Street until he meets his match with Nancy Thompson, one of the most iconic final girls, and someone that I might be making a video about later on. Freddy has one of the most colorful character designs, with his signature green and red, almost Christmas-like sweater, brown hat, and his nightmare-inducing bladed glove. Wes Craven states he got the inspiration for Freddy Krueger one night as he looked out his window as a child and saw a creepy-looking man standing by his house. The man menacingly stared at Craven before walking out of sight, something that stuck with him into adulthood. The name Freddy Krueger actually comes from one of Wes Craven's childhood bullies, and I wonder what he's up to now. Hopefully not sporting a bladed glove and killing teenagers. Anyway, Freddy's design is a result of Craven wanting to make the character stand out from the other horror villains of the time, stating, "A lot of the killers were wearing masks. Leatherface, Michael Myers, Jason. I wanted my villain to have a mask, but be able to talk and taunt and threaten. So I thought of him being burned and scarred." Craven succeeded in making Freddy stand out from the crowd, and his look remained consistent throughout the franchise. I'm gonna go ahead and give Freddy an 8 out of 10 for design. And I'm only taking 2 points away because I didn't really like his look in the remakes. Yeah, I might have a thing for 80s Freddy. Moving on. Freddy probably has the best abilities out of any horror villain because there really is no limit to what he can do when he's in his victim's dreams. Freddy teleports, his arms stretch, he can warp his appearance, he even French kisses Nancy through a phone. There's really nothing he can't do. Not to mention, his weapon is definitely the most iconic, next to Jason's machete or Leatherface's chainsaw.
I mean, I think the leather glove with blades is already pretty gruesome enough as it is, but the fact that he can manifest it to appear anywhere, like in your bathtub, yeah, I'm gonna stick to taking showers.
With that being said, I don't think anybody will argue with me that all of this is reason enough to give Freddy a 10 out of 10 for this section. But if you're still on the fence, let me remind you that the concept of dying from your dreams is actually based on a true story. Craven was inspired by an event reported by the LA Times in the 70s referred to as Asian Death Syndrome, a phenomenon where refugees were suffering disturbing nightmares due to trauma, causing them to refuse to sleep. Some of the men even died in their sleep soon after. I'll be right back. I'm gonna make some coffee. Although being arguably one of the most evil since he, murders kids, Freddy is one of the most beloved horror slashers by the general public. This is mostly due to his personality, often being parodied in media repeatedly.
Welcome to your nightmare, bitch!
Oh, here we go. Holy crap! Looks like some sort of legally safe knockoff of an 80s horror character with miniature swords for fingers instead of knives.
I'm Scary Terry! You can run, but you can't hide, bitch!
Out of the 3 main 80s horror slashers, Michael, Freddy, and Jason, Freddy is the only one who actually talks, giving him a lot of opportunity to become a quotable icon. And boy does he have a lot to say.
Welcome to prime time, bitch!
Freddy delivers some of the most iconic horror movie one-liners of the entire genre, helping cement him in popular culture permanently. Not to mention, Freddy is also one of the most marketed of the villains, with clothing lines, dolls, action figures, even home decor. Freddy knows how to make a quick buck. And does anybody else find it weird that all of this was marketed towards kids? The kid killer? Anyway, it's undeniable that Freddy is a bona fide star, which is why I'm giving him a 9 out of 10 for reception. Arguably the star of Scream, released in 1996, a film that brought horror back to life in the 90s after audiences had grown tired of outdated formulas and endless sequels. Ghostface is the most recent and most self-aware of the iconic slasher villain lineup, and he's different from the others because the entity has been portrayed by multiple different characters within the Scream mythology. In the original film though, it's Billy and Stu who don the iconic costume during their killing spree in the town of Westboro.
Another note, since the Ghostface identity is actually worn by both men and women in the Scream franchise, I'm gonna go ahead and refer to the character as they, them from now on. A non-binary icon.
The design for Ghostface has one of the simplest and most modern takes, sporting a white mask and black hooded cloak with faux tatters. Unlike our other villains on this list, Ghostface's look isn't totally original to the film itself. The Ghostface mask was first developed for novelty stores during the Halloween season between 1991 and 1992 by a costume company named Fun World. The mask itself was known as the Peanut-Eyed Ghost. Huh, sounds kinda cute actually. There are different versions of the story, but in short, Craven saw the mask and wanted it for the film. After trying to make a similar version, they eventually obtained the licensing rights for the original from Fun World, and the film's wardrobe team designed the Father Death black cloak to tie it all together. And now the complete Ghostface costume has been a pop culture symbol ever since. Inspiration for the mask comes from the famous painting known as The Scream by Edvard Munch, the cover of the Pink Floyd album The Wall, and the ghostly characters that appeared in the 1930s Betty Boop cartoons. I'm giving Ghostface an 8 out of 10 for design because I actually own this costume and it's probably one of my favorites to wear. It also feels the most nostalgic to me just because it was such a huge part of my childhood. With Scream and Scary Movie, I remember this costume being everywhere and yeah, it just kind of like takes me back to an earlier time. So yeah, totally biased. I mean, it is really creepy though, right? Now to ability. I absolutely hate to do this, but since Ghostface is always just some disgruntled human being in a costume and doesn't actually have any supernatural abilities like the others on this list, I'm gonna have to give them a 4 out of 10. I will say though that Ghostface is probably the quickest and most agile of the villains, and I've always wanted to get my hands on one of those voice boxes so I can prank my friends. I mean, I don't want to get cocky, but I do feel like out of everybody on this list, Ghostface is probably the one that I would have the most chance of surviving. Depends who's behind the mask. What Ghostface lacks in ability, they definitely make up for in reception. I'm gonna start this section off by pointing out that I actually ran a poll on my Twitter page asking people who their favorite slasher villain was, and Ghostface was in the lead from the very beginning, ultimately winning the whole thing. I think that's reason enough to give Ghostface a 10 out of 10 for reception. However, I will add that the Ghostface mask is easily one of the most recognizable, often being parodied and referenced in other media, most famously in Scary Movie, which took it to a whole nother level. I've also noticed that Ghostface has had a huge resurgence in popularity lately on social media with the return of 90s culture, usually in a comedic or sexual context. A lot of people seem to be in love with Billy and Stu. Anyway, I'm gonna credit this to the fact that Scream was released in 1996, making Ghostface the slasher villain that millennials and Gen Z would be the most exposed to. Scream has the least amount of installments on this list, but with a new film scheduled to be released next year, we're sure to see a lot more of Ghostface, and I for one am dying to see who's under the mask this time.
Wow, that's all very useful information. But who won? Hello?
It was Michael Myers with a score of 8.6.
What? He's my favorite. I'm not really going to go into more detail. As I told you before, I was going to be biased in this video, and Michael Myers definitely has a special place in my heart. Maybe it's because Halloween was one of the first horror movies that I remember watching on TV, or maybe it's just because I like the silent type. Well, I hope you guys love Michael Myers as much as I do, and if you don't, please let me know down in the comments section who your favorite slasher villain is. Maybe we'll argue a little bit. Who knows? As always, take care, and until next time, see ya.